Hello and welcome back to The Space Between. My name is Kolby Van Camp here with Dawson Wagner, and you're listening to one of the top astronomy podcasts in the world, and for that matter, the universe. It's super awesome to be with you here today. We have a great guest that I'm about to introduce to you, and I've been dying to get on the show. We were able to get him by, and that's super cool. So I'm excited to share that with you. But just a quick update, housekeeping. We're doing all the things. We've got social media. Go follow us at Space Between Pod on Instagram. We have a Facebook page that I realized was called the Space Between Podcast for some time because I somehow missed typing in the C on the thing. So for like a month, it's been the Space Between Podcast. And one of my colleagues sent me a message and said, hey, you shared a thing about your podcast. And I'm being a grammar Nazi, but it's a podcast. I'm like, yes, you're not being a grammar Nazi. You're just being correct. No, that's my fault. So you can follow us on Facebook if you'd like. Definitely, wherever you're listening to this podcast. If it's on YouTube, hit subscribe. If it's on Apple Podcasts, just follow us. Give us 5 stars. If it's on Spotify, follow us. Give us 5 stars. Leave us a review too. That's interesting. I like to read those. We're still working on naming you the audience, and we got a new submission, so that's cool. We're up to 3 now. The Betwixters. So that was an interesting one to read. I was like, okay, I see where that's coming from. So shout out to you who sent us that. That's pretty cool. If you want to get in on the action on Spotify, it'll be till the end of November. By the time that we've ended November, that's where we'll be done. All right. And then we'll just pick a name and we'll roll with that name until we decide not to anymore. So if we ever just decide to cut that. So yeah, it'll just be one of those things. So I'm excited. Just if you're on Spotify, scroll down. There it is. Fill out the form. That's great. It's super easy. You just type in a name. And then if not, then if you're on Apple Podcasts, just send us a message on Instagram. Send us a note on our website, spacebetweenpodcast.com. And yeah, we'll get into all the cool stuff. But now, it's my distinct pleasure to be sitting down with Trevor Jones of AstroBackyard, one of the top YouTube channels in the world for astrophotography, and just the amount of astrophotography work that Trevor does in his personal time and creating his own portfolio, but then in helping the beginner astrophotography community is just absolutely huge. Trevor, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day and sitting down with us. It means the world to me. This is a benchmark episode in my mind, so I appreciate it.
Cool. Very happy to be here. Excited.
So we're just going to jump right into these questions, and we'll keep this nice and punchy for you. But I'm just curious, how did you first get into astrophotography, and what motivated you to start sharing your journey on YouTube?
Yeah, I get asked this question a lot, and I think what people expect to hear is that, I was always interested in space since I was like 8 years old, and I got my first telescope and this and that. But really, it started a lot later when I was about 25, and I worked a 9-to-5 office job where I was really in a cubicle all day, and I was just looking for something like an escape, something that was so different than what I was used to. And at that time, just the stage of my life, I wanted something different that other people weren't doing. And I think I just started looking around online. And I remember the Earth Sky website was really influential for me. I was like, what's in the sky tonight? And it's like, oh, Jupiter's out. Like, could I actually see that through a telescope? So yeah, I took the visual road. My first telescope was a Dobsonian. And the rest is history from there. But it was really just looking for a new hobby that was an escape from my day-to-day 9-to-5 job.
Okay. Can I ask what your 9-to-5 was? Was it so terrible that you had to get out of it, or do you still enjoy that? You just don't want to do that as much?
No, so it was actually a very comfortable, great job. I worked with great people. So my background was in graphic design, okay. And then as I grew with the company I was at, it turned into more of a marketing role and more content creation, which would be very helpful later on in my career, my personal career. But that's what I was doing at the time. So it was I enjoyed it, but there was something about sitting at a computer for 8 hours straight that just started to get old after a while.
Sure. No, I totally feel that. With Dawson and I in radio, it's a lot of sitting behind microphones and talking to people that aren't in the room and working on very specific by yourself kind of stuff. And sometimes it's appealing when you're calling the football game and the crowd's going crazy. That's thrilling and exciting, and it makes it all worth it. But in the day to day, if you're just producing the morning show, woof, that can get kind of monotonous from time to time. So no, I definitely respect and appreciate that. Could you share just some of the key challenges you faced when you began astrophotography and how you overcame it?
This is one of the main reasons I started my channel. Was I feel for these beginners and how daunting it is early on. So the early challenges I had was, I don't like asking for help. I like to be resourceful and kind of figure things out on my own. And learning astrophotography that way was the ultimate challenge, because I'd run into people that were experts that weren't really willing to help me, and they were kind of I felt dumb asking these, really beginner questions on the forums that were around at the time. And the hobby's really come a long way since then. But at that time, it was like this old boys club, and they didn't want to let me in. And yeah, so the challenges were just like getting clear answers on like, okay, what exactly do I need to get started? And I don't want the smart ass answer of like, oh, well, you have to go straight to this expert level telescope. Like, tell me what I actually need. And I am on a tight budget. And it's like some things never change. You see these same questions getting asked in the Facebook groups, and people giving them, smart ass answers and everything. But yeah, all of the challenges that people still face jumping into this insane hobby are the ones that I dealt with. And honestly, I had no technical background. Like some of the people that start this hobby are they're electrical engineers, or they're good with stuff like that, where I was good with Photoshop, but other than that, I didn't really have any sort of leg up on getting started.
That's such a fascinating background. Nico Carver was on the show. He was my second episode. He was super humbled to just sit down with me when I was doing this by myself, and it turned out into this whole thing. But Nico sat down, and I said, "What's your background? How did you get into this?" He's like, "Dude, I'm a librarian. I have like a master's in library science, and I just am really good at researching stuff. And so I researched my way into this hobby." And I feel like for so many people, that's what happens, is that they see pictures, they see something from James Webb, or they see something from Hubble, and they're like, I want to do that. But that seems really daunting. No, it's not. You can take your DSLR and go outside tonight and do it. And you might not get the incredible results at first, but if you work at it like anything, you're gonna break through and start to figure out how things work for you. And so I just think that that's a super cool part of the astrophotography community, because it all has these humble beginnings, right? You see a picture, you think it's cool, and then suddenly you've spent $10,000 and you're sucked into this hobby that you will never be able to let go of.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Nico does such a great job of that, of making it more approachable with his style of content, where it's like, if you have a DSLR and a tripod, yes, you can capture the Andromeda galaxy. Because that crowd I ran into early on, they would say you can't do anything without an EQ mount, or without a dedicated astronomy camera and stuff like that. Like, no, you can, and you have to start somewhere.
Yeah. No, there's definitely a learning curve that you have to kind of work your way around when you're at the beginning stages. But once you get through it, then it becomes all very accessible. It's shockingly accessible. And the pictures you can take are really fabulous. Dawson, I know you've got pressing questions.
Yeah, no, I was kind of waiting to interject about some of the equipment. I was curious about, the equipment and software that you use. What are some things that you find essential for astrophotography, especially for those that are just starting out in the hobby?
So the one that stands out right now for people starting out that didn't exist 10 years ago is the ASI Air, which, love it or hate it, it's meant for controlling the ASI cameras from ZWO. So they've kind of have this closed ecosystem, which people don't like, but fortunately they make great affordable cameras anyway. So as long as you can get over that, the ASI Air is an incredible tool, because it automates everything into kind of a single package where you can control your telescope mount, the camera, your guide camera. It does all these amazing things for you for running a full astrophotography imaging session, and you can do it on your phone. And there's something very slick and smooth about it. as opposed to the old way things used to be, where it's okay, I have my laptop computer with 7 pieces of software installed. All the drivers need to be updated. If one of them goes haywire on you, your entire session's done. And that's kind of what I was used to. So this ASI Air Mini PC, that's what the product is, kind of ties everything in together. And that's like probably the most pivotal piece of equipment these days that I'm taking full advantage of. And I think that beginners are so fortunate to have that option now.
It's essentially a Raspberry Pi computer inside of just a metal box, right? That you just plug everything into.
Yep, but like the magic of it is the refined software and everything communicating so well with each other. But yeah, because you could of course build one yourself with install the software on it, and there's alternative options. But man, it would be tough to build one that's as complete and painless as the ASI Air.
It's on my Christmas list. I told my wife. She said, "Is there anything you want for Christmas?" I said, "I want that." And if you can muster that, then we'll be really good.
I tell with everyone, like, because I was so hesitant, because I like to if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of thing, and I had my old routine, so I dragged my feet on using the ASI Air for so long. And now I'm at the point where it's just, I can't wait to recommend it to people so they can thank me later, because man, it's such a game changer. It makes the hobby so much more enjoyable. It's the only way I was able to get Ashley, my wife, into it when she realized that she could just do it on her phone and it was so painless. It's really an amazing tool.
I have to say, I would love to get my wife into this, but she turns into a pumpkin at 10:30 exactly, without fail. It doesn't matter where we are, what we're doing. She goes to sleep, and so the long nights aren't built for her. But I'd love to get her into that too. I stay up to like 3 a.m. most nights, and I have to, or I don't function right.
It's a tough sell to ask someone to stay up outside in the cold, and even if you're out there just briefly, it's a real tough sell at the end of the day to stay up and do this and kind of just sit there.
How cold does it get for you in Canada? In like the peak of winter, how cold does it go?
The winters are minus 20 degrees Celsius, so I don't know what the conversion is for you guys. Ooh. But well below freezing, where like touching metal, you'll like a cold burn on your hand touching metal, like extremely cold. Whereas like you wonder if your equipment is actually going to survive through it, and somehow it does.
That's really cool. Do you have terrible wind? Is there like a wind chill factor where you live in Canada, or is that not so much a thing?
Yeah, wind can be an issue. It's not so bad in the winter. Luckily, the two are timed kind of separately. In the spring, we usually get the really, really strong winds as the seasons are changing. But yeah, that's always an issue too. And it's funny, when I'm checking the forecast for a night of imaging, it's the one that I always forget to check. Mm-hmm. So it's like, okay, it's going to be this temperature. It's going to be clear for these hours. And I get out there and it's like, oh, it's windy tonight. This is not going to be good.
Well, and for our listeners, the wind, just even the slightest little bump to your camera ruins an image. And so if you're out there with 15-mile-an-hour winds, then forget about it, because your camera's just sitting there rattling on the mount the entire time, and your pictures are worthless.
Yeah, you need that camera and telescope to be absolutely secure, not moving an inch when you're taking a 5-minute exposure. It needs to be tracking perfectly along with your object, and any little nudge and that 5-minute exposure is ruined. So there's something extra painful about wind being the culprit for ruining a sub.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because in Kansas, we get wind chills up to, I don't know, and this is Fahrenheit, so I don't know what the conversion would be for you, but I don't know, -30 sometimes. Yeah, I would say. Yeah, it's stiff. And I don't know if you've ever been to Kansas in the United States. I totally recommend it if you do, because it's crystal clear in the winter. It's just perfect, but it's dummy cold, and there's a lot of wind because there's nothing. Kansas is just like cornfields and soybeans. There's a whole lot of nothing out there to stop the wind. And so that's always the first thing that I look for when I check out the forecast. I'm like, all right, what's the wind like? And if it says 5 miles an hour or less, I forget about it. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen tonight.
Interesting. So yeah, it's something you look for when setting up. So yeah, wind is not usually an issue for me over here, but that's interesting for you where it makes or breaks your whole night.
Yeah, and it's year round, unfortunately, because it's so flat. It's just in the summer, it's terrible because you get all those thunderstorms, and it's great like landscape photography if you're into that. But then in the winter, it just goes haywire, and it's kind of sucks, and it gets dummy cold. It is so cold because of it.
Interesting. So it's yeah, the we have the alternate problem where the air is so still and hot in the summertime, and the humidity is through the roof, where it's so miserable just to be out there, where you just sitting down, you're sweating because it's 40 degrees Celsius with the humidex.
Jeez.
So those hot still nights. So I mean, if it's not one thing, it's another. I think that's the moral of the story.
No, that's definitely the moral of the story. Kind of switching gears, Dawson and I are graduate students, and we're super into science communication, even though our background is not in any way in science. I'm not a scientist by any stretch of the imagination. We consider ourselves communications scientists. Yeah, we're getting masters of science in mass communications. So science is in the degree name, so I'm going to call myself a scientist then. But your channel has a strong educational component, which I just think is fabulous. How do you approach explaining complex astrophotography concepts to your audience in an accessible way? Because that's really tough from a science communication standpoint.
I really try to remember. So for all my videos, I try to keep in mind that a lot of people are seeing it for the first time. These terms are new to them. I'm not going to assume that they know anything going in. Where I've seen other channels where I watch it and say, like, you know what, 80% of the people coming into this channel don't know what you're talking about, and they might just leave. So it's hard to find a balance where you're respecting your longtime viewers and keeping them entertained, but also explaining things well enough for someone for the first time to understand it. So for the astrophotography terms, that's where I have to really keep that in mind, because the average person doesn't know what dithering means. So I can't just throw that in there expecting them to know that. Whereas the astronomy stuff, it's so much easier for me to remember that, because I don't have a science background either. So a lot of the times when I'm talking about an object, it's because I've read the full Wikipedia page on the Ring Nebula and how many light years away it is too. So I'm kind of educating myself. So in those instances, it's very easy, because it's like, hey, I bet you didn't know this, because I didn't know this.
No, I love that. That's a really important component to just communication in general, is understanding what you know, having a context in which you can put it in, and understanding what other people know, and then being able to talk about it effectively from there. That's super important in anything that you do, but especially if you're trying to make a living out of a YouTube channel where it's about communication. You have to talk to people at their level. That's super tough. I respect the heck out of you for that.
Yeah. And as someone, who bridges the gap between astronomy and like the public through your YouTube channel, how do you kind of see your role in fostering a broader interest in space exploration and understanding?
I take it so seriously. I feel like it's kind of my mission to be that voice between like what's missing in. I do it through astrophotography, so I know that a lot of people are very much interested in the photography side of things and less in the scientific side, but I also know that that's how I got in the hobby, and then it led to all this joy of understanding more about astronomy and space, and all those other things come with it. So if I can lead them down that road to at least expose them to what I was exposed to in a really, entertaining and fun way, I mean, that's the best part of the job. Just knowing that, I can expose people to these new concepts and stuff that might really change their life, especially the young viewers where they don't know what they want to do with their career yet. And think of the opportunities available to them if I've at least made them aware of all these different roads you can take. That's a real honor, and I take it really seriously.
That's super cool. I love that kind of mission that you have going on, not only just to educate people, but to help them find their way. I think that so often we as a culture, as a society, end up losing our way because we get caught up in the hustle and bustle, and it's, I've got bills to pay, I've got people to take care of, it's all this other stuff that you don't have fun anymore. And it's so sad. And I see people that just stop having fun and that to worship at the altar of money. And it's like, man, I could care less about the money. If I can eat, can I eat my food? Yeah. Can I live somewhere and not feel like I'm in, this terrible situation? Yeah. Can I provide? Yeah. Other than that, then have fun. You know what I'm saying? And that's a really cool way to go about your life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm totally on board with that. Like about finding your passion and just something that you think is cool, and it can be totally like I keep coming back to the young viewers where it's just like you have this pressure from social pressure to do what everyone else is doing. And I kind of like how nerdy and geeky astronomy is and astrophotography. It's like, this can be your cool thing. And I think it's pretty cool. And I also like being a role model too, where even if it's not just like, hey, like, I mean, say this is a really nerdy hobby. If they think of it that way, like Trevor's pretty cool and he does it, so maybe it is kind of cool. Like I think of stuff like that too. And it makes me happy to do that.
No, that's great. I'm totally about that. My background is in music, in classical music, and there are a lot of people these days that don't think classical music is cool. And if I can help people see the beauty in that, then that's a mission accomplished. Whether they end up being an opera singer or not, I don't really care. But if they can sit back and appreciate, the music that I think is timeless, then that's really cool, and that's satisfying and it's gratifying as well.
That's awesome. I didn't know that. Yeah, classical music. I dig classical music.
Nice. Very good.
I could get into that.
We'll have to exchange notes. That was my life forever. I still do it. I still gig around,
Cool.
but it's I changed career paths, so I could make music my vacation. I say radio is my vocation and music is my vacation, and I prefer to keep it that way, because then all the joy of music gets sucked out of it, right? Because it comes back to worshiping at the altar of money, and how am I going to survive today? And I know too many people that just aren't surviving, which is really unfortunate. So I had to step away from it in that way. And I think it's been one of the smartest moves I've personally ever made. And I recommend it to literally all of my musician friends that have like music degrees. Like, you don't need to make this your entire life. Go do something that you can do and then make music your passion.
There's something about the arts where that happens, where you get bitter on, it's like, okay, this was something that used to make me so happy, and now you've introduced money and getting paid for it, and it's just it changes everything. And that's definitely what happened to me with graphic design. I went to art school, and it's like, okay, I'm going to be an artist, digital artist, and then I was just like, yeah, it lost its fun as soon as I got paid to do it, which is what I thought I wanted. But again, I pivoted into, I still get to do those types of things, but more in a way that I want to. And man, it just takes time to figure that stuff out, I guess.
Yeah, it takes time and life experience. And unfortunately, a lot of people are unwilling to get knocked over for the sake of life experience, to have that realization moment, because it's too scary.
Totally.
I totally understand. But if you do, and I'm not advocating to let life run you over and to be like subjugated to other things that you don't want to be subjugated to. But that's like a life philosophy that I hold, that I see a lot of people in the artistic community, in the photography community, heck, even in radio, even the radio community is like that. And I think that's really important to always keep as a reminder.
Yeah, I'm big on like, don't get too comfortable either. You get stuck in your comfort zone, and you're really in a rut. And then nobody wins, because if you're in that zone where you're not really trying anymore, like then you're not delivering, like it's not your best work, right? Because you've just kind of given up. So
Sure.
that's in, again, personal experience, 10 years as this graphic design thing, where it's just like, yeah, it was a leap of faith to quit that career and start a YouTube channel. People thought I was crazy, but it's the best decision I ever made. So I'm always telling other people to just like follow their dreams. And Ash always makes fun of me at a party because she'll just overhear me talking to someone saying like, oh, you're into dogs, you're dog training, like start a YouTube channel and then an Instagram account. And she's like, you can't just keep telling people to do that. Not everyone's going to make it.
Oh, that's so funny. I still relish the looks that I get when people say, oh, what do you do? And I say, I have a music education and music composition degree. And they're like, Oh, do you make money? Like, yeah, I don't care if I make money. Am I happy? Should be the question you're asking. And yes, I'm very happy. So, yeah.
Yeah, all the unorthodox career paths, it's always makes for an interesting conversation when you meet new people and you tell them what you do. Because, yeah, and we get that a lot. Like, I come up with a new way to try and describe what Ash and I do for a living, depending on who it is that's asking. Because, someone over the age of 50, if I say I'm a YouTuber, they will just, they'll just walk in the other direction. Or so, whereas if I tell an 18-year-old, they're like, "Oh man, like you've got it made. You're a YouTuber. That's the best,"
Yeah. Yeah. What do you tell the 50-year-old that would just shut off? Do you say I'm a professional photographer? Is that what you say?
So I say we teach photography, and they go, "Oh,
Nice.
okay, cool." Like you do like local classes, and like, well, it's more online, and it's not regular photography, it's astrophotography. And oh, wow. So that's been working for us lately. That's what we've been saying.
Nice. When you, in that context, when you put astro in front of anything, people are like, "Whoa, he's a rocket scientist. He photographs rockets."
Exactly.
Like that's incredible. No, that's fantastic. Well, coming up next, we're going to be talking a little bit more with Trevor Jones about some of the incredible stuff that he's doing on his YouTube channel, AstroBackyard, right here on The Space Between.
I'm so tired of light.
Light can suck.
Yeah, in the worst way and best way possible. I feel like there's so many times where I'm trying to capture something with my astrophotography that's just not going the way I want to because there's light. Well, thankfully, there is someone who's trying to solve that. Dark Sky International is a nonprofit organization that works to end light pollution. Their mission is to protect the nighttime environment and dark skies through environmentally responsible outdoor lighting. Some of the approved guidelines that they've been trying to pass is restricting the amount of upward directed light, avoiding glare, avoiding overlighting, and utilizing dimming and other appropriate lighting controls. Making sure to minimize short wavelength and bluish light in the nighttime environment will go a long way. So check out darksky.org and make sure to sign up and try to help out our friends over at the International Dark Sky Association.
Hi, my name is Ryan Gilbert. I'm a former sports broadcaster for Wildcat 91.9, K-State alum, and basketball recruiting editor for GoPowerCat.com. The last academic year was a historic one for the station, as Wildcat 91.9 was named the best college radio station in the nation by the Intercollegiate Broadcasting System Awards, the first national championship in program history. However, despite all the awards and success, the budget for Wildcat 91.9 continues to be cut year by year. I'll be perfectly frank with you. Either Wildcat 91.9 finds new funding through charitable giving, or it will permanently go off the air. That's why I'm asking you today to consider making a tax-deductible contribution to the station so that the longest continuously running college FM radio station in the nation can continue to train the next generation of media stars. To make a contribution or discuss options for creating an endowment fund, please reach out to us at www.wildcat919.com/donate. That's www.wildcat919.com/donate. Thanks so much. Go Cats, and always remember that at Wildcat 919, you belong.
And now a word from our affiliate, High Point Scientific. We're starting to exit galaxy season. R.I.P. But that means one of our biggest friends in the night sky, the Orion constellation, is starting to hit the skies here in the Northern Hemisphere. And that means that I'm going to be out and investing in a range of new gear to get my best photos to date of the Orion Nebula, the Horsehead Nebula, and perhaps even the Greater Barnard's Loop that's also in the Orion constellation. I'm going to be frequenting High Point Scientific, and I suggest you do too for all your astronomical needs. Visiting the link in the description of this and every one of our episodes for your purchases will provide us with a small commission, which not only helps Dawson and I continue to make technical improvements for the show, it helps us make technical improvements to our astrophotography as well. Thank you very much to High Point Scientific. Welcome back to The Space Between. Kolby Van Camp and Dawson Wagner sitting here with Trevor Jones, one of the top astrophotography educational experts, YouTube channels in the world. I'm a huge fan of Trevor's work. If you haven't checked out his YouTube channel and you're an astrophotographer, and even if you're not an astrophotographer, the pictures at the end are fabulous. So you need to check out his channel because it's just fantastic. I wholeheartedly endorse it. Dawson knows that I don't endorse everything. I'm opinionated on what I do and don't endorse. And so you have my full stamp of approval, man. So I hope that helps you and gets you a couple more listeners than you had yesterday.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So, considering your expertise in capturing celestial objects and deep sky objects, what aspects of their astrophysical nature fascinate you the most and why?
Hmm. So the certain object that stands out to me that I find fascinating. I love supernova remnants. Not only the look of them. So I recently shot the Veil Nebula, and just to know that it was a star at the end of its life, and it just shot out this material. So they not only look spectacular, but just knowing what caused it, I find really cool. Stuff like the Crab Nebula. The ancient Chinese astronomers noticed a guest star in the sky where they could actually see it during the day. This new nebula during the day all of a sudden appeared, which gives me goosebumps to think about if something like that happened in our lifetime. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, there's a new nebula in the sky now because of this event. And like for the week after it happened, you could see it getting a little bit dimmer and dimmer. Like I think it's the nature of it's still moving and still evolving. I love that.
Yeah, that's super cool. We talked with somebody from NASA recently about the falling numbers and people that are trying to like be a part of NASA. And it was really fascinating to hear about, people that are currently in NASA that are getting older. They were there in the 60s when people were landing on the moon, and everybody wanted to be astronauts. Everybody wanted to be physicists. Everybody wanted to be rocket scientists. It was very in vogue to be a part of the space community, and it's not in vogue anymore. And I just wonder what a nebula like that, what an explosion in our sky that you could see at during the day. It's so bright that you can see it at any time of day. I think that would be absolutely insane. And I just wonder what would that do for the scientific and space community in general if you have a whole generation of people that remember this one event that will never happen again.
Yeah, it's so interesting when these certain celestial events happen, even if it's a full moon, if it's a lunar eclipse, a solar eclipse, a new comet in the sky, because we have all these numbers of our audience and the interest and views, we see these spikes when there's a new comet in the sky or there's a lunar eclipse. There's all this extra interest in astronomy. So I love those moments because it just exposes more people to our world and gets them thinking about it more. But yeah, of course, in the 60s with the moon landing, it's like it was everything. It was so front page, front row center to the world.
Yeah. Dawson and I are super big and interested in the Artemis missions, about going back to the moon, and then also the missions about potentially going to Mars. And we've talked at length about what would it do? Just what would it do for us as a civilization? Like what would it do for us to have that experience again?
It's incredible to think about that. That's where we're at. That in our lifetime, we're going to see this stuff. We're going to be on the moon again, and we're going to see humans on Mars. I mean, I can't think of anything more. Not insane's the wrong word, but just it's unbelievable to me that I'm going to see that in my lifetime. I mean, I guess that's the plan, right? In the next 20, when what's the timeline for Mars?
Dawson's more the expert on the Mars missions.
The timeline for Mars is more so like 2030, 2040, but even that's a rough estimate. I think the Artemis missions with sending humans back through the NASA programs, with the use of SpaceX's ships. I think really the Starship is the big one that they want to be able to eventually have to take astronauts back to hopefully create some sort of just testing area on the south pole of the moon. And so I think that's really, to me, that's really inspiring, and like, wow, the fact that we could see that just in the next 5 to 10 years is their plan. Kind of cool.
Yeah, I have all these conflicted feelings about this stuff when it's like space is so what's the word? It's like precious, but it's also it's kind of untouched right now. And to look up at the moon and to see a man-made light or base on there, like I know it's going to happen, and I know it's going to be so important for humans to reach that level. But I'll also be a little bit sad knowing that it will never be the same. And we've made our mark on that too. And also the idea of not to get too dark, we've ruined Earth. So we need to come up with a way to go somewhere else and then ruin that planet, yeah. I'm again, I feel very conflicted. I know it's happening. I'm excited about it too, but there's a part of me that's a bit sad that this is where we're at.
Well, and there's this existential like dread that people feel about space. It's strange. I tie it to like the feeling of public speaking. Like, you have to do it. You want to do it. But like part of you wants to do it because you just want to be done with it. But the other part of you wants to do it because you want to be good at it. Right. And I feel like that's kind of where humanity is at right now. And there's something to be said exactly what you're talking about how we're going to be the generation that sees people land on the moon again. We're going to be the generation that sees people land on Mars. Like that, those are going to be significant moments in human history that we will never forget. But then at the same time, we will also be the generation that sees the degradation of all of these celestial objects that have remained untouched for millions of years. And that's also kind of weird. Like we're the final frontier in so many ways, and also the very first in so many ways as well, which is odd.
Yeah, sacred was the word I was looking for. So to me, the night sky is sacred, and everyone deserves to be able to see an unspoiled sky. And as we know, that doesn't exist anymore. You can't go anywhere on Earth without seeing man-made satellites going by, and light pollution, as you know, is getting worse and worse. So in many ways, it's like we're already past all the that perfect version of space that we once had.
So we have been talking about extraterrestrials in the last couple of episodes. Our most recent episode talked about AI and whether we should be looking for artificial intelligence as the extraterrestrials that we should be looking for, rather than little green men flying around in spaceships. And Dawson has a fabulous question for you about extraterrestrials that I'm just dying for him to ask. So go for it.
I'm just interested in, like from your perspective, how does the study of exoplanets and astrobiology intersect with the kind of visual storytelling aspect of astrophotography? I think with like the recent, within the last year, there's a lot of things in relation to extraterrestrial life that has captured kind of the public imagination. Was kind of your perspective on that?
I do get asked about that a lot, and I have to be very careful because people really a lot of people are kind of one side or the other. It's like, aliens, you're crazy. It's just they're so quick to jump to that. So, but whereas I'm more, I'm open to everything, and I know things, aren't always as black and white as they may seem. The interesting thing for me is I've spent more time outside in the middle of the night looking up at the sky, often in these remote locations, than most people. I spent a lot of time. There has not been very many times when there's been something that I didn't recognize. And I think for people that are really looking for signs of something going on, they would think that if you just look long enough, you'll find something. I've spent a lot of time, and there's pretty well a reason, a good explanation for everything I've seen. I definitely think, just the numbers alone, the number of planets in the universe, it's like there's no way we're the only one with life. I don't know what stage they're at, and chances are they're much more sophisticated than us. And if they did come by and visit us, they'd be very, very careful about it. It's just interesting. You could really go down this road, but the one that always stood out to me was that the UAP, is that what we're calling them now? UAPs?
Yeah, UAPs.
It's the government. Yeah.
UAP sightings go way up when we're destroying Earth. Like during war, they would see a lot more when they're just really like, okay, what are you guys doing to this precious Goldilocks planet? Because we may have to intervene because you guys don't realize how important you are. That one, I was like, that kind of gives me chills. Like,
that's compelling. Yeah. No, that's a very compelling argument about we talked about this in the AI episode where there was a theory that was presented like midway through the Cold War, where somebody said, "What if we took everybody's nukes and we put them all together and we detonated them in the night sky, like outside of our atmosphere, and we detonated them as a sign to see if we could like attract attention, because that would be huge. That would be like a minor supernova event. There's so much energy that's involved in that." And there was somebody in the corner that said, "Hey, what if that makes them mad?" And they said, "Actually, okay, that's probably a good idea." So then they never did it. And then we joked about, could you imagine like going over to Russia and being like, "Hey, give us your nukes. We're American. You can trust us."
Agree,
right? So I, it's this whole like international cooperation issue, but at the same time, the spirit of the idea I thought was interesting, and that's fascinating in the context of the UAP sightings that go up during times of when we're destroying ourselves. That's interesting. I've never heard that theory before, but that makes at face value a lot of sense.
Yeah, that one stood out to me. The other one is the reverse engine, the technological advances that were made in the 60s that really were like things just kind of shot off, where it's like, if something was, it's almost like this new technology was found and reverse engineered, and then we made all this progress in this like 10-year period. So that one too, like that one stood out to me, where it's like, that's interesting.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting.
So I'm kind of curious, just as a visual storyteller of yourself, of the night sky, how do you see the intersection between art and science in astrophotography? How does that kind of like dual perspective enhance your appreciation of the cosmos?
Yeah, that can be a really touchy subject for some people. I'm heavily on the art side myself, where it's like, who's to say, once you start manipulating these images that you've photographed, there's a lot of interpretation there, and you're kind of the creative freedom to make the object look more dynamic. I mean, the Hubble Space Telescope, the way it would capture objects and color map the different gases to different colors. It's a false color image. It doesn't actually look like that. But it was widely accepted, and I think that went a long way for astrophotographers to say, okay, we're allowed to portray these objects this way, because scientifically it is helpful to see this separation and to see this color and say, okay, blue is oxygen, green is the hydrogen alpha. Like it has scientific value as well. But then, as an artist, you want to make these beautiful images. You take that to the next level, and you create these really colorful, dynamic looking images. But I think there is a dividing line, and it gets blurry between the science of astrophotography and the art. And from what I've seen, most people are way on the art side, only because the scientific side there's a lot of rules where it's like, okay, you have to make sure there's a lot of precautions you need to take to keep it that level of scientific accuracy, where you kind of lose some of the fun of why I think a lot of people get into astrophotography.
That's very insightful. And when we talked with John Mather, who's the senior astrophysicist for the James Webb Space Telescope, he had given a lecture at K-State about a month ago, and he said something during the lecture that just blew my mind, and I never thought about it that way, because somebody somewhere is processing the images for NASA, and I've never thought about it that way. I always thought that it was just like a computer that spat it out and did all the stuff because it's NASA, right? There's no human on the other end messing with the pictures. And he told us there's a woman in California that's like their person, and she just processes all the images. I'm like, she uses Cyril. She just sits there with all of NASA's data, like insane data, and then has the pleasure of processing them. And there's a very interesting line between how much of it did she tweak because she wants to be artistic, but then how much is exactly what NASA spat back out. You know what I'm saying? And I thought that was a really kind of like mind-blowing revelation for me as just an amateur,
Yeah, what a huge responsibility that is too. Like it's so much fun, but man, that is a stressful job too, right? Because the more if you find that balance between it looking beautiful and it being scientifically accurate, you'll reach more people with a more exciting image too, right? So there's that too. You don't want it to be an underwhelming image of this new data. Like there's value in it being exciting.
Yeah. When you think about astrophotography and you think about the way that you can go around the world to these really remote locations, like I'm just off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like Chile, where you go out to Chile into the desert and then you take images of the night sky. Have you done anything like that? Have you like traveled really extensively to try and get the perfect shot? Because I feel like at this point you probably would have.
Yeah, it's nowhere. Chile's on the list. That's the ultimate bucket list. And next year we're going to Australia, which has been on my list. I've never been under a southern hemisphere sky, believe it or not.
Oh yeah.
But I have been to some Bortle 1 sites. In Texas, there's a lot of great places. It was actually Oklahoma. There's a star party there in a Bortle 1 sky.
Really?
That was the ultimate experience. Yeah, for not only are the images so much better, you don't need any filters, and the star colors are so vibrant, but just the being there physically and looking up at that sky, somewhere so dark that Venus casts a shadow, the Milky Way casts a shadow. Like it's an unbelievable experience to have. And like, forget the pictures aside, just to be under a truly dark sky like that, then you start thinking about like, okay, this was the norm 100 years ago. You could see a sky like that anywhere, and now it's lost. And I think there's something very therapeutic about being under a sky like that. It becomes very apparent of you're on this rock orbiting a star in space when you can look out into this window, whereas now living in the city, it's just completely gone. So you don't have those feelings at all. You see the moon and that's it.
Yeah. Now there's a Bortle 2 sky in like central Kansas that I've been to, and it was so godforsakenly cold that we drove all the way out there, spent like an hour, and I said I can't do this. It's too cold, man. it's way too cold. And like to the point that my camera was freezing up, and I didn't at the time have an EQ mount, so I was physically out there like taking pictures, and it was awful. And I said I just need to go home. We'll try again some other time. And I aspire to go and see a sky like that. The sky that I usually shoot under is a Bortle 4. I have a relationship with a farmer just about a half hour from where we're currently located in Kansas. And I stand out there in his field, and his cows chill out there with me. They like it when I show up and they come and hang around, and then I take pictures of the sky. And over the summer, it was one of the few times that I've seen the Milky Way. Like I could see it with my own eyes. I didn't have to use a telescope. I didn't have to use binoculars. I could just sit there and look at it. And that was a very humbling experience. It's not one I'll soon forget because it meant so much more to me in that moment than it ever had before. And I just wish that people had that opportunity. I think that it would enhance the existential, oh my God, there's literally nothing out there. We're just a couple of people on a speck in the middle of nowhere. But at the same time, incredible at the same time.
Yeah, it's an incredible feeling to look out into the core of the Milky Way and you really start to think about it as a galaxy, and you're looking into a spiral arm. I crave that feeling, and I crave seeing that. More time goes on, I try to, as many times per year, get to a really dark spot on a moonless night and just spend as much time as possible, because to me, it's a really great feeling that I've started to crave.
What's the most memorable, maybe, or awe-inspiring moment that you've had, in your experience while, pursuing astrophotography?
Oh boy. So just because we were just talking about it recently, because that Bortle 1 trip was last year, and that was the darkest sky I'd ever been to. We did this night sky hike up this mountain in Oklahoma, and it was a moonless night, so it was very, very dark, but because of the glow of the Milky Way and the stars, it was enough for us to see and safely hike up this mountain. And when we got to the top, it was like being on another planet because it was so crisp and so clear that like the edge of the horizon line and where the Milky Way started was like a defined line. There was no, the atmosphere was nice and still. I really felt like I was on another planet, and it was just kind of like, this is possible on Earth to get this feeling. Like I felt like an astronaut. That was a pretty surreal feeling. And then of course, taking the photos there were some of my best ever too, but that was pretty special. So yeah, an easy answer there is just to spend as much time as possible under the darkest moonless sky I can find.
Definitely. Where in Oklahoma was that, if I can ask? Are you allowed to share that?
We're in the Panhandle.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the Panhandle's only so big. So, like, we're on that trip. We were in Texas, we were in New Mexico, and we were in Oklahoma in this little stretch. The funny thing is, when people ask us for, when we go to these star parties, it's always a place you've never heard of because it's so remote and it's in the middle of nowhere. I can't remember the name of the town, but that one was the Okie Tech Star Party, which has been going on for many years, and it's one of the best star parties, if not the best, that I've ever been to.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, I live right on top of Oklahoma, so I need to figure out where this location is because I'd love to go down there and experience that.
Was it the Black Mesa State Park by chance?
That's the one. Yes. Black Mesa.
Nice.
Yes.
Took a wild guess right there. Okay, we're gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, there's dinosaur tracks there. It's a really cool spot. Ashley and I hiked the Black Mesa. It was like a 3-hour hike. But just an incredible experience overall because it's so different, the landscape there, than it is here in Ontario at home, dry and desert-like and flat, and, whereas here is just all green and wet and Great Lakes, and which is great too, but it was just cool. It felt like it added to that whole feeling like we were on another planet thing.
Sure. No, I definitely understand that. As we're starting to wrap up the show, I've got 2 final questions for you. And the first one is, what's the image that you're most proud of? And once you've identified that, what's the grail shot? What's the shot that you haven't acquired that you have to go for this particular deep sky object or whatever that might be?
I'll say the grail one first. And it's not that it's such a tough target or that other people haven't done it well, and that but it's the fact that I've tried to capture this object a dozen times and I keep failing. And I find it so beautiful. And I've seen so many great images. It's M78. It's a reflection nebula in Orion. And right there in Orion, big, like it's every winter it comes back, and I keep trying, and I just can't pull it off. So that's my grail shot that when I cross it off my list, I can die a happy man. But because I failed so many times now, it's in my head where it's like, it doesn't want me to capture it. There's something going on. And then my most proudest shot, it's maybe not the most exciting answer, but my latest image of the Andromeda Galaxy is really important to me because, there's a whole backstory of, the time in my life when I started shooting that. And there's a really old video that took off on my YouTube channel that really made me think that maybe this could actually be a career. And it was a video where I shot the Andromeda Galaxy, and I dedicated the photo to my father, who passed away like a week later. So I always kind of associated him with that picture. And then 5 years later, I shot it, in all its glory, and it turned out the way I wanted to, and it was kind of a tribute to him. So because I've been doing this so long, a lot of these projects I associate with times in my life. So they have this like under this layer of meaning that, maybe most people wouldn't see.
Oh, totally. I do the exact same thing with music. Like I'll hear a song at a time in my life where for no reason at all, it's become important to me. And then it's just like my song, right? And every time I hear that, I associate with a person or a place. And it's interesting how we vault that in our brains, and how we as humans associate memories with things, or memories with sounds, or your olfactory senses, or whatever it might be. And I love that. I think that it, excuse me, I think it helps to tell the story.
I totally agree. And it's when I tell people, oh, the Andromeda Galaxy, it's like, really, out of all the objects, like it does, I know it doesn't sound exciting, but like there's more to it than that.
Sure. Well, as we finish up the show, firstly, what advice would you give to someone interested in starting their own astrophotography journey or YouTube channel in this particular niche?
So for astrophotography, I would say you really just set your expectations and realize that it is a lot of work, and there's going to be times that are less glamorous and less fun. But learn to enjoy those moments and know that, if it was easy, everybody would do it. Enjoy the fact that it's a very niche, specialized hobby, that you're in the club now where it's like, if you're an astrophotographer, we get to share all these moments of struggle together. We all get to the other end and get to enjoy these images, and most people won't understand what it took to get the image. So enjoy that part of it. And then for YouTube, my biggest advice is don't see what's working and just do another copy of it, and like try and just replicate their success. It just doesn't work. It hasn't worked for me. I don't see it working for anyone else. Don't be a clone of another channel. Do something different. Do something you're passionate about. And people are going to notice that. If you're truly passionate about it and good at what you do and take care in your final product of these videos, people will really notice it and really appreciate it. And that's the key to a successful channel.
That's incredible advice. And again, I think it's applicable to everything. I think it's applicable to life. Don't put a product out there that you aren't proud of, for the sake of putting it out there. I think that's such a huge thing. And I appreciate that advice.
Cool.
So out of curiosity, where can we find your channel? Like I know where I can find your channel. I'm subscribed to it, but where can the average listener of our show, what's the link? How can we stay up to date with your astrophotography and your YouTube work?
So it's just youtube.com/astrobackyard. But you could also just Google AstroBackyard and you'll find everything. We're lucky enough to capture that name for that's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Everything is just AstroBackyard, all one word. But YouTube is probably my most proudest platform in the work we do there.
Okay. Well, go and give AstroBackyard a sub. They definitely deserve it. Trevor's work is great, and I'm super appreciative of you being on the show today. It's been, like I said, a benchmark for me to get some of these people that I have watched from a distance and really enjoyed their work, and it's cool to be able to sit down and talk with you. So thank you. This has been a lot of fun.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm so glad you asked me to come on. This was great.
Awesome. That makes me feel way better about myself than I did an hour ago. No, it's okay. It's all good. But with all that being said, to all of our listeners, go check out our new website, spacebetweenpodcast.com. If you want to reach out to us, you can. There's a bunch of different ways for you to connect with us. You can follow us on Instagram at spacebetweenpod. Whatever you're doing right now, if it's Apple Podcast, Spotify, it doesn't matter. Hit the subscribe button and then give us 5 stars. That's all we're asking for, 5 stars. And it's an easy ask. So just hit the little button and we'll be just great. But again, super appreciative to Trevor. Thank you for coming by. And yeah, for Kolby Van Camp and Dawson Wagner, you've been listening to The Space Between.